All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Line Your Own Pockets. Interesting one today from an email that Dave put out. I remember reading this email when it came through, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But the premise was kind of presenting a bunch of different systems to people and saying which of these would you trade and why. I saw some back and forth with the emails of different people who had different ideas, and then we're going to talk about what we think as well. So why don't you kind of cue up the exercise a little bit more for the people here?
Yeah, so this is a strategy that I've put through the strategy cruncher. I've got basically four different versions of this strategy that I'm choosing between. So I
Hmm.
thought I'd send a message out to my mailing list. It's a free newsletter where I, talk about this stuff all the time. And I got a lot of really good responses to it. So I thought we'd bring it up here and Uh, so I'll just go through each version of this strategy and just display, call out the stats of each one, and um, just as I go through these, just think about as I'm reading them, think about the listeners, think about which one you're drawn to compared to the others. So version one has a profit factor of 1.87, win percent 53.8. There's 3,800 trades, which corresponds to 3.3 trades per day.
Hmm. I think
Okay.
that's the important number to focus on. So yeah, roughly 3 trades a day.
Version two, profit factor 3.29, win percent a little bit higher, 55.1, and 1,600 trades or 1.4 trades a day. So a little bit less than half of the version one. Then there's version three, sorry. Version three, profit factor 4.65. So getting up there. Win percent 63.2. Trades 427. So almost half a trade per day on
Hmm.
average.
Or a trade every 2 days. Yeah,
Yep.
roughly.
And then version four, profit factor 7.59. Win percent 72.6. Number of trades 106. So one trade every 10 days, roughly.
So just to really, to kind of go through the numbers, is we're getting to the point where we start off with a lot of trades and a decent edge, right? 1.9 profit factor is good, right? It's a great strategy depending on what the equity curve looks like and all that stuff that we talk about. And as we go through, we are getting significantly better on every jump and then really shrinking it down the amount of trades. Whereas, something like a 7.5 profit factor that has a, trade every 10 days, that's a almost a rare event at that point because we're talking day trading at this point, so pretty much a rare event at that point. But again, a 7.5 profit factor is pretty ludicrous, right? It's an amazing risk reward metric. It's an amazing return metric. But that's kind of how, if you're thinking about it in your head, is that version 4 has nearly no trades, we could say very very little, but really really accurate when it's right and makes a whole lot of money when it happens. And then the other one is the complete opposite. It's a small edge that you're kind of exploiting over and over and over again, and making good money with that. And the question is, of those things, where on this band of trading strategies does it make the most sense to hang out at?
Yeah. And so just to be clear, this is all basically one strategy, one basic
Yep.
idea, but I've used the cruncher to give me basically four different versions of it. And I'm trying to decide which one to go forward with. So what was your gut reaction when you saw this, Michael?
My gut reaction right off the bat is, for a day trading strategy, 3 trades isn't crazy. So I kind of immediately gravitated to the more frequent trader that is right, a little over half the time, right? 54% is a little bit over half the time, but has that good profit factor. And I think part of this, what we'll find is there'll be some nuance to it. But for me, that's kind of how I really like to specifically day trade. I want to send out tons and tons of day trades. I find it helps me mentally as well, when I'm not really concerned with what any individual thing does. So I like that as well. And it just feels like one of those your systems that you feel like you are the casino at that point. You're being the casino in respects of you're just putting out tons of little tiny bets, and then over time those bets make you money, and you're not really focused. And I think another episode that this would be a good one to reference as well is when we did the wide net versus the
Yeah.
narrow amount of trades. But that's where I went to. But yeah, I see how it's a hard problem because like the more you stare at it, the more you're like, I don't know, trading once every 10 days and making a whole lot of money when I do, and being right 75 or let's just say, you're only wrong 1 in 4 times. That sounds like it would feel really nice anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are drawn to that just because humans want to feel like they're right or they want to be right. So I think probably new traders are drawn to that version. It's actually interesting. Probably I would suspect newer traders are drawn to that version. Experienced traders realize the power of the version one,
Hmm.
and then I bet there's a more advanced trader that wants to do a blend. So Um, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I bet as you progress, you probably see the value in each of these versions and can make an argument for any one of them.
Well, and it's funny. One of the things I wanted to do right away, because again, I read this email when it came in. I was really interested with it, and I'm starting to think because of course you have your initial reaction, like I just gave you, but then you, as a quant or a systematic trader, whatever you want to call us, you always want to dig a little deeper. So in my head, I'm like saying, do I chart these out? Is there some sort of like regression line I run through it, or is there something? Because it's interesting because you immediately look at the extremes. You look at number one and number four. You look at the one that trades a whole bunch and not at all. And then in my head, I'm like, well, is both good? Is some combination of them? Should I be trading all of
Yeah.
these? How does it work? But it's interesting that I don't think, and you can tell me what your response was. I bet you there wasn't many in the middle. I bet you it was a lot of one or the other.
Well, it was interesting. So the responses I got were kind of all over the map. There were some people
Interesting.
that were drawn to version two, version three. There was people that said, "Yeah, version four. There's no way that's real." Um, so they were kind of all over the map.
I could see that. I didn't immediately think of that, but that was there was some of that in my head as well. Is at what point, which I guess could be a good conversation to have, at what point is it that there's too little trades to kind of trust the results? Again, in a vacuum, right? We're saying, of course, you would do some sort of paper trading and live testing and things like that of a strategy before you took it live. But at what point do you get to the point where 100 seems to be really small? Do you get to the point where you just don't trust the results that come out because there's just not enough data points to be confident?
Yeah, one guy pointed that out and said, "Hey, this isn't even statistically significant. There's no way."
Mm,
And now, in a vacuum, if these were all independent, then I could. He's totally right, but they're
yeah,
not all independent. This is all one idea, one strategy, and the reason the different versions vary so dramatically is that there are basically two columns, two data points that are highly predictive for this. So when you find that, when you find a strategy and the data points that are really predictive to profit for a strategy, you get lots of different options like this. And the strategy cruncher will show you exactly what those are. So it's a matter of just brainstorming and finding the columns, and the cruncher will tell you exactly what the which columns are important and the exact value to use for a rule to exploit it. So and to come up with these different versions.
hmm,
So um, one way to think about that is if I didn't know the columns that were predicted for this, I would not be able to come up with the different versions. I'd be trading version one. That's it. Like I wouldn't have these other options to choose from. So I think it's a good lesson that any strategy is just like one column away from being really great. If you find the predictive one that matters and is important to the signal.
Well, and I like the that example, and it makes perfect sense when you think about it that way. That if someone came to you and said, "Here's a strategy that has 100 trades in it, and here's the results," and completely again in a vacuum where you have no idea where that came from, you would say, "Yeah, that's you need more data to kind of confirm your notion here." But what you're saying is that, let's say it's a gap mean reversion trade, right? I've taken all of the gaps that have ever existed in the universe and realized that there's like a 53% chance that they're too far. So if you short things that gap up and you buy things that gap down, then generally, and then from there you're just narrowing those in based off of columns that, of course, make sense. They're not like the migratory patterns of elephants or something. It's things that make sense. Then when you're narrowing those down, because your broad idea showed merit, it becomes a whole lot easier to say, okay, every iteration that narrows this down, this will also then have some kind of merit. Where that starting point, I think, is huge, and that's where we always talk about that starting point. You want thousands and thousands and thousands of trades in to show that there is really any validity to your underlying idea at all. And then when you get to a version 4, you might not have as much confidence in it as something with more trades, but at least the underlying premise should always at least go back to that small edge. So like if version 4 was completely curve fitted to death, but the initial premise that it was made off of still had that edge to it, then the worst case scenario, you're defaulting back to that first edge. It might not be right 75% of the time, but it should still be right that 53% of the time that gave you that initial confidence to explore the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if I've told you, Michael, sort of about the drawdown that I was in about 10 or 15 years ago. Terrible drawdown. And it was sort of the motivation for coming up with the cruncher and like sort of reinventing myself as a trader. So I almost quit trading. Like it was, drawdowns are terrible, and this one was pretty bad. And I'll tell you what happened. So I was trading this gap strategy. It was working great, scaling up over time, slowly, conservatively, but scaling up over the years. And it went into a drawdown, and I was like, man, this sucks. Let me scale back my size. I'm trading with a lot of size here. And the drawdown eventually smoothed out, and I eventually made new equity highs. And at that, in my review at that time, I remember thinking, man, if I'd have just kept the size I was trading, I would be my equity would be a lot higher than now. I'm not going to make that mistake again, right? So the following year, I was determined to keep my size really high, even all the way through this drawdown, and it kept going and going. I'm losing more and more money, and that it just sucks, right? You're doing all this work, you're making all these trades, you're doing all this work, and you're losing money. I mean, that is a very difficult situation to be in. So that I sort of cried uncle. I backed off, and that was it was a very difficult time because I had no confidence really in the strategy at this point. It had put my daughters through college. It allowed me to change my lifestyle, and here it was not working. I mean, this is what I did. So it's just really, I almost quit. So I felt like I was at a dead end, and I did not want to be in a dead end anymore. Like I did not want to ever get in that situation. So I came up with this basically completely overhauled my workflow. So I would not be in that situation again. Now, what happens is when you have a workflow like this, and a lot of the traders I coach for this workflow, it ends up being actually you get some kind of hard decisions like this because it's not an easy decision which one to choose here.
No, yeah,
and it's kind of hard. You have to figure out, okay, what do I really want here? So you've really actually got multiple good options, and that's sometimes tricky for people. But I like it. It's way better than the alternative, which the alternative is, well, you have one version, or you have actually no versions, or you're at a dead end and you're out of ideas. So the fact that this is a challenging question, I think, is a great thing, and it forces people to really understand more about the strategy and figure out why it works and come up with different versions. And a lot of these versions you can use to come up with completely new strategies that are related to this, sort of tangential to the idea. So it's a good frame of mind to be in.
Well, and I think it proves too that it's the numbers aren't enough, right? And we talk about this on a few things where I could see worlds, probably not likely, but I could see worlds where some or all of these equity charts look awful and they look really, really hard to trade and have deep drawdowns with really clustered winners. And like you were talking about the drawdown that you went through. Well, what if that happens all the time, right? And there's these, everything happens in clusters, big clusters of losers and big clusters of winners, and ends up working out okay. And it just goes to show you that you can't very easily anyway just say, oh, well, I'll pick that one strategy because it has the highest profit factor or makes the most amount of money in the long run, or whatever that ends up being, because you end up having these different tiers of, well, I care about this metric, and some people might care about that other metric better, and for some people, again, they might really need that very high accuracy rate, the 63% plus accuracy rate. So it becomes a very difficult exercise to say, well, this thing makes more money, so in theory, that's what you should end up doing. But if losses are clustered, if it doesn't feel good to trade, if you're not able to do it, I give the example of, I could give you the perfect diet, but if you can't stick to it, who cares? Because it's not going to work for you. It's the same kind of thing. So yeah, it just shows that you can put the numbers on the page, and those are interesting, but sometimes they're just not. They're not enough.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. You said you liked version 1 because it was, you said 3 trades wasn't too many, and so you're drawn to that one.
Yeah.
What if I made a version 0 that had the profit factor would say, let's call it 1.6, and there were, say, 10,000 trades, so maybe almost 10 trades a day. What would you think about that?
Well, so first we are, just to confirm with everyone, slippage and commission, all trading costs, that's all included in this.
Commissions are included. So that is a good point. So I never include slippage in my back tests. And we could probably do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
I look at it and, compute and figure out, okay, how much can I live with and this strategy still work? But I like for the back test to be like the ideal benchmark to work from. I think that's the right way to do it. Because I think modeling slippage as a baseline and using that as the reference, it's way too tricky, and it varies so much by position size. So it just becomes really, really hard to model, and it doesn't make any sense to me to try to model it, especially when you're going to be scaling this thing up over time, hopefully, and it's going to vary so dramatically.
Yeah, that seems like one. We'll shelve that for later. That seems like a whole podcast in its own. But
yeah,
so commissions are included. So it has way more trades, and the profit factor shrinks just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I would still probably even go with that one. Again, assuming a couple things, commissions are included, and there is a way to fully automate this. So, I'm one, I've probably been saying since we started this particular podcast, I am a horrible day trader. So I know that my, let's say, temperament is not suited to day trading. So to offset that, I have to fully automate every part of the day. I cannot hit a single button or I will do it wrong, and I will, do it too aggressively and all of that. So assuming we can fully systematize that, I would probably go, and what I do quite a bit with my own day trading that I've been building out now is just as many trades with as tiny of an edge as possible. And for a lot of the reasons that, I talked about at the beginning, that I find that that's easier personally from a mental side of things to not have to concern myself with any given trade. I find that the more that I'm spread out kind of long and short throughout the day with different systems, the easier it is for my brain. So I'm going to do it not because I think it's like mathematically better, just because I think for me personally, there's more of a chance that I'll kind of stick with that correctly.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you say before how terrible a day trader you are, and I think the truth is very few people are good at that.
Oh yeah,
And
I'd say less than, I don't know, less than 5%, maybe even 1%, are like actually naturally skilled at doing that, and are able to. And you're talking like Buddhist monks at that point that are able to keep that mental cool. And I think you're right. I think it's just important that people kind of admit that to themselves. I think that goes a long way.
yeah, and automation really. I've seen a lot of the traders I coach. That's when they really turn the corner. Is basically you've given yourself a chance to scale wide.
Hmm.
You've given yourself a chance to actually trade a version 0 of this that trades 10 times a day. And when you do that, I mean, there's a whole bunch of strategies that you've just opened up to yourself. And there, like you said, it reduces the importance of any one trade. You can hide big losing trades in the strategy so there's just all different options have opened up to you by adding automation. So
Hmm.
it's
Oh,
it's usually a big step for people.
it has been a huge. I have been profitable. I've been talking about how I've been trading with this prop firm, Trade the Pool. That's an equity prop firm. I've been able to pass one of their challenges completely and making money with it fully, and wouldn't even attempt it if there wasn't automated. So I think it
Yeah.
opens up. And then like what you talked about is not only from the kind of mental and emotional side of things, but it really opens up your mind to pushing limits. Like in theory, again, commissions and everything included, I could take 500 trades a day. I could take 1,000 trades a day if I had the buying power for it and there wasn't, any sort of degradation doing it, because I'm not hitting any buttons. The computer's doing it for you. So I think that's another part of it. Whereas that maybe not the one trade every 10 days, but maybe version 2 that does like a trade or maybe 2 trades a day. That might be better for somebody who is completely adverse to any sort of automated assistance and they want to see, have some sort of alert come off or something and then take a trade manually. That 1 to 2 trade a day might be better. And for that person, I'd also say we have a podcast on that and how we try to convert you over to our side. But I think that is part of it as well, is whether or not you are, 3 to 4 trades a day is still probably doable. But yeah, that 10 trade a day, I would say is not doable unless you're automating it in some way.
Yeah. So there's actually two main benefits to automation, and they're on the opposite extremes. So yeah, it allows you to be able to trade something that trades 10 or more trades a day. But also it allows you to trade something that trades really infrequently. You
Hmm.
can set up automation to constantly be looking for that trade that happen. You don't have to be watching for it. You don't have to remember exactly what it is. You can have automation set up to make that trade that happens once every 10 days.
Well,
That's another
and
really good use for it.
that's another mental hurdle. I would say that if you're experiencing, right, I can definitely relate to you where I had one day this week that I fell off the bandwagon, and it was because I was actually watching the trading happening, and there was, I think, 2 days, and my systems will probably take between 5 and 10 trades on average a day. But there was 2 days, and not to kind of timestamp this too much, but the market was kind of crazy, and there was just nothing came through. There was no trades that happened. So I took a little bit of manual trade, got a small slap on the wrist, but it was pure boredom. Whereas if I wasn't watching it at all, you're 100% right. It helps, and they help with different sides of things where, it becomes easier to say, well, I'm more comfortable not taking a trade because I know if an opportunity arrives that's in my system, my bot will take it. So whereas, right, I fell off the wagon. I took that manual trade because there was nothing going on. But you're right. It is that other side of things where if you have something that happens once a month, but it's amazing when it happens, automating that is huge, because how mad would you be if you missed it? And do you have that kind of stoicism to sit there for, like, say it trades once a month and you're sitting there for 19 days out of the 20 trading days of the month doing nothing, but having to stay like sharp as a tack so that when it does happen, you're ready to go. I never thought about that, but that's obviously 100% true.
Yeah, and then when, imagine you have all these other systems that do trade frequently, and you have this one that's going to trade once every 10 days. And maybe you have multiple that trade different frequencies. Like when that signal comes through and it's time to take this trade manually, are you going to remember exactly what it was? You're comparing it to other systems now. What size are you planning on taking? Like, you have to do that really fast. And that's just like, it's great to have automation to do that. It's a game changer for sure. So let's talk about how I'm leaning toward trading this. So I think it's so when you find the data points, the columns, the filters that are highly predictive, and you can create different versions like this, which are significantly different. I think it puts you in a really good mindset to figure out the subset of the trades in the system that you can take with larger size. We've done a whole episode on this. Trading a portion of your strategy with bigger size.
Yep.
I think it's such a good habit to get into. It's a really good mindset to get into, to be thinking about that. What subset of the trades in your system are better than the remaining? And there's just no way that they all have the same probability. I mean, there's just no way that's the case. And you can see that here when you find the right columns that are predictive. So the question is, what do you do in this situation? And my instinct here is I want to do, I like the version 1 because the feedback loop is going to be so much faster. You're going to be able to verify that things are working as expected really quickly, and you can scale up faster. Whereas if you choose version 4, it may be several days. It may be even more than that before you really can become confident. So I like version 1 for like a path to confidence, which is important.
Yep.
And then I like using automation and using a different sizing for the subset that is going to be in like a version 3 or a version 4 here. So do you do that with any of your systems? What's your take on this?
Not currently on the day trading side. I do a couple of that on the swing trading side, but not because I disagree in any way, just because I don't think I've kind of gotten there. But I do love that. And again, I love the concept of that. Even if version 4 doesn't pan out, it's probably just going to revert back to like a version 1. It's not going to go completely horribly against you. But that was, I think, the more advanced. You talked about how beginning traders probably gravitate to 3 or 4, and more experienced traders maybe 1 or 2. But with the back and forth that you're having, I think the more advanced, like the ultra advanced version, is that some sort of hybrid of one or two, or a hybrid of all of them, where you have different varying position sizes based off different particular equity curves. So it very much is one of those, I think, a little bit to each their own as well. I could see someone totally fine with just I'm going to do version 1. It's going to be slow and steady and consistent. I'm fine with that. But yeah, I want to get into it more. I guess the question would be, when it comes to buying power utilization, like how do you approach that if you're sizing up with kind of multiple systems? Because my worry would be, if I'm waiting for, say, version 4 to trigger and take that bigger, then version 1, am I then not trading it with enough size? Like, I'm not utilizing all my buying power there if I'm waiting for the other one, or would I liquidate some to get more buying power to hit the other, or how would that end up working?
Yeah, you'd have to. Um, so the way I would do it is, I would trade version 1 and then have a rule in there that says, okay, if if the if the filters say this, then trade it with size times 3 or whatever. Um, but yeah, you would have to uh, figure out the buying power issues there. And let's just say that when you get a system like this, the buying power stuff is really fun to figure out, because usually you're very highly motivated when you get
Yeah.
that warning message. So when you get in this situation and you get that warning message, all of a sudden your most creative self comes forward to figure out exactly how to make more buying power for yourself. Figure out. There's just lots of things you could do to trade a system like this when you can see what's available and what's possible.
And maybe another episode there, because I am interested in just like personally in picking your brain on that, because I was thinking the same thing, because my goal every day, and I'm seeing it right here on my day trading screen, is to get that maxed out buying power. So I've hit that, and then the question would be, okay, so now I get, it would be just a failed trade at this point from this higher end version. And then, okay, what do I end up doing in that scenario, right? Is do I have the system liquidate enough to, and you're right, there's many ways to do it. You could say, okay, all the trades that are profitable, start to take some off those and add to this new trade or whatever. So this is where things like path dependency really come into play, where you're trying to figure out in what scenario would this have to happen. But you're right, it's a good problem to have if you're just making money over time and then you're seeing an opportunity to make more. It's if you're not there yet, what I would say is probably just trade a version 1 or whatever version you're comfortable with until you get to that point. And when you have that problem, you're right, that's a much more, it's a high quality, it's a high class problem to have, to say, oh, I missed this trade that would have made me even more money, and I really should have sized up in that one, as opposed to sizing down in it.
So really what I encourage traders to do is create versions like this of their strategy for themselves, choose one, and then when you get into the situation where you are out of buying power, you take a step back, you look at all the systems that you're trading, you look at which one is consuming the most buying power, and you look at the profitability of each of them. So a lot of times what you can do here, so I've worked with several traders where the situation is, they're trading 5 different strategies, say, they're running out of buying power. And when we look at the results, there's one strategy that's trading a lot and consuming a lot of buying power, but it's not as profitable as the other ones. So in that case, so what we do in that situation is you move from a version 1 of that strategy to a version 2 that trades, has a higher profit factor, fewer trades, and then you do. So it's essentially going to consume less buying power, and then overall you run out of less buying power, you become more efficient. And that gives you a way for, at any point, to make that adjustment in a way that makes sense and in a way that you can get behind.
Well, and then the other thing I think that kind of leads to that is that we right now are saying, and everything we're doing in this scenario is all assuming that this is the only strategy that you currently have. But the same problems we're talking about would apply across strategies. So say, for example, you have something that trades 10 times a day and it has a better profit factor than the 1.87. Well, you may just skip that due to just a buying power restriction, right? It's where your line of what to trade is something that is different to different scenarios. Where I could look at something and someone could say, oh, all of my current are over 2 profit factor, right? So I'm not even going to even look at version 1. That's not interesting to me because I'm usually maxed out every day in buying power with better. So I'm going to just skip, say, version 1 or 2, and I'm going to go right to a 3 or 4 because that's just not, it's where I am personally. But yeah, so it's going to, again, very different depending on where you are kind of in that trading journey.
Yeah, and to that point, it's better to start from a version that trades more frequently because it's a lot easier to remove trades from a system to make it more profitable than to add trades. So, a common scenario is you start trading version 1, it trades a lot, and then you realize, oh, there's more slippage than I thought, or for whatever reason, it's not performing quite as well as you thought. Well, when you get into that situation, you have a very natural way to improve the strategy. You could say, okay, well, I'm going to go with version 2. The profit factor is way better. It can, it can withstand the slippage that I realize is in there now. So it's just a way to very naturally improve without feeling like you're at a dead end and you have to throw the strategy out completely. This is why I have basically a roadmap, like a blueprint for every strategy, so that because like I said, I don't want to be in that dead end situation that I was where I didn't have options, and it sucks. So it's good to give yourself options like this and sort of have a plan, knowing that life's not perfect and your strategy is not going to measure up exactly to the back test, but you give yourself options and a plan to react when that situation occurs.
Well, so this is something to think about as well. I was just thinking while you're talking. We recently did an episode on trading on vacation, right? And how to trade when you're away. Would it make sense to maybe say you're trading version 1 of this and you're trading, 4 or 5 times a day, but now you're on vacation or something, and let's say you're one of those anti-automation people, to like push to a version 4 with some sort of alerting to say, listen, don't bug me unless the real one comes through, the one that really works. And then I'm going to kind of drop everything and take that trade real quick if I can. That I could see would have merit if you are someone who is not, again, fully automating the system, or even if you are, and maybe you just want less work to do when it comes to journaling or something like that. I could see that scenario where you're saying, hey, just for this week or this day or something like that, I'm really going to ratchet up the quality of my trades and make sure that I'm only
Yeah.
taking the best possible trades because I just don't have time to deal with journaling and all of that for the other ones.
Yeah, I like that. I not thought about it quite in that way, but yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great idea.
So yeah, lots of, and I think so. At the end of the day, it boils down to really there is no answer. There's no that one is the
Yeah.
one that you do. It has a lot to do with right where are you in your trading journey, where what are your other systems look like. We didn't even talk about correlations among systems, but that could be part of the equation as well. And then your level of automation, right? Do you or do you automate it all, or are you very comfortable at kind of automating and leaving it? Because if you're doing more trades, that's going to be more important. Less trades, it's going to be less important. And back to the diet example, it's not a perfect thing for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope listeners get some good use out of this one and some good ideas for how they can apply this sort of concept to their strategies. It really all boils down to finding the predictive factors, finding the columns that uh, are highly predictive for your strategy. And when you do that, that opens up a lot of possibilities like this.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't be able to do this narrowing down ability if you didn't have what happened. And also, when I was reading this, the difference between the advice for discretionary traders and systematic traders, I always find, is so vast. Like you'll hear all the time from people who are training maybe discretionary traders say, hey, you only take your best setups, right? You sit there and you wait for the absolute best possible setups. And I kind of laugh when I hear that now as a systematic trader. I'm like, why? If you've got a bunch of buying power sitting around and you've got a setup with a 51%, right, 1.1 profit factor edge, why not? If that's all you got, right, use it. And this kind of shows that as well, that it might not be better to wait for that amazing, fat pitch setup, because even the worst version of this when it comes to profit factor is still great. And to be honest, it'd be the one that I would choose.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those discretionary traders, waiting for the fat pitch ones, the more systematic you get, the more you can really be confident that you know what the fat pitch trades are, right? And a lot of discretionary traders, I think they do, but when you look at the numbers, those pitches aren't as fat as they thought, or there's another way to find pitches that are way fatter, to continue with the analogy.
Or, and again, you didn't include this, I would be interested to see in just absolute dollar value, like what do you make at the end of it? Assume $100,000 account, because I think sending that to maybe people on your email list might be interesting, because I bet you version 4 might be the lowest. If you're assuming kind of constant risk throughout, it would definitely be the lowest. But even if you're sizing up the risk a little bit, it would still probably be the lowest. So that might be an interesting exercise as well, where you look at it and you say, well, I've been told to wait for my fat pitch, my version 4, and really, really hit it when it happens. But even if you're doubling or tripling your risk, if you're still falling short of a version 1, then that kind of blows a lot of that thinking out of the water, where no, you would be better to trade constantly in what's the harder pitch, quote unquote, to hit. Over time, you'd make way more money than the guy who's sitting there waiting for the fat pitch and really going ham when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, a baseball team can hit a whole bunch of singles and never hit a home run and still win a lot of baseball games, right?
Yeah, perfect. I love that analogy. I think it's a good place to leave it. I thought this was, again, very interesting. And, make sure if you're on lineyourownpockets.com, I think there is links to both of our little email addresses there. And make sure you're signing up, because we're both sending out really good and free content. This was one of those, I'm not going to say I get super interested in every email that I get, but this was one of those that I definitely spent, let's say, a way longer time thinking about than a lot of them. Because I was like, because you have that initial reaction, and then of course you're always second guessing your initial reaction and saying, well, I initially thought that, but is that right? Am I right to say that my initial thing of I should take this? And those are the kind of exercises that I think is different from us and discretionary traders, where these are the problems that we're thinking about, not what that chart looks like or what what stock am I going to trade today or anything. We're not thinking about any of those, but we're thinking more of this kind of high level idea stuff. So yeah, I really like that. So make sure you're signing up there. You're signing up there as well for those.
Yep.
Cool. Just thought looked like you were going to say something there, so I wanted to give you some chance. But no, I thought that was a great one. And yes, go to lineyourownpockets.com. You can always get all of this stuff here as well. And until next time, I'm Michael Noss.
And I'm Dave May. Join us next week on Line Your Own Pockets.